Jack's Electronic Repair is a classic job shop scheduling problem. You can tell from the structure of the data. Let's take a look. Jack, the owner of Jack's Electronic Repair, currently has 5 jobs to be scheduled. This is what I mean by the structure of the data. There is a list of jobs, just named A through E here. There is processing time, how long each one's going to take, and then there is another column of data for due date, or when was each one of the jobs promised by. That is typical single center work center scheduling problem. Oh, okay, now wait a minute. What's the actual question? If Jack used SPT, shortest processing time, that's what that means. To schedule these jobs, what would be the average job tardiness? Oh, all right. Now, in order to answer that question, I have to evaluate this schedule. So in order to evaluate this schedule, I have to actually create the schedule. So I might as well create a workspace for myself in the lower part of the page. Let me see. Schedule. What is the actual schedule? Well, if he's using shortest processing time, that means that he's sorting by the processing time from the shortest to the longest. So that means that B would go first. All right, I'm just going to note that. B would go first, D would go second, A would go third, C would go fourth, and E would go fifth. Because Jack of Jack's Electronic Repair can only do one of these jobs at a time, so your priority sequencing rule, like shortest processing time, is simply a rule for sorting. Okay, they're sorted. Now, it didn't ask what the sequence would be, it asked what the average tardiness was. And you cannot find tardiness until you have found flow time first. Oh, so better do that. Let me see, flow time. The flow time for a job is how long it spends in the system. The flow time for a job is basically how long it will take until you're finished with that job. The flow time for the first job in the sequence is its duration, its processing time. B is the first job in the sequence. Jack will get to work on B right away. That means that B will be done in 1 hour. The flow time is automatically the processing time. D has to wait for B to finish. So D will have to wait 1 hour, plus D is 2 hours worth of work. The flow time for job D is 3 hours. The flow time for a job is the flow time for the job before, plus the actual job's processing time. Oh, all right, now we just keep this pattern up going down the list. A has to wait for 3 hours. It's waiting for B and D to finish. Plus A is, I can see on the data table, 3 hours long. That means the flow time for job A is 6 hours. It will be done in 6 hours. C has to wait those 6 hours. Plus C is 4 hours worth of work. That means the flow time for job C is 10 hours. It'll be done in 10 hours. E has to wait those 10 hours. The last job, it is 5 hours worth of work. That means it will be finished 15 hours from now. Oh, and a good check on my math. This is the flow time of the last job, right? I'm looking up here. I add up these numbers, just sum them up. They need to add up to the same number. The flow time of the last job in any sequence, not just shortest processing time and not just this problem. The flow time of the last job in the sequence should equal the sum of the duration data. That's the make span of this particular schedule. That's how long it takes to do all of this stuff. So we'd better finish up the last job in that amount of time. If those two things didn't match, something went wrong with your flow time calculations. Oh, all right, now, we were trying to answer a question on what's the average tardiness. That means that we need to calculate the tardiness for each one of these jobs now. Oh, that's another column in our worksheet. Tardiness. Tardiness. Well, the flow time for job B is 1 hour. That means it'll be done in an hour. I compare it to when was job B promised in 1 hour. Oh, it'll be right on time. That means it won't be tardy. Tardiness is 0. With D, D will be finished in 3 hours. This is why we needed the flow time. I am looking on the schedule. It says D is due in 3 hours. Perfect. It'll be right on time, or the tardiness is 0. A will be finished in 6 hours. Its flow time is 6 hours. A was promised in 5 hours. Uh-oh, now we're running into trouble. A was due in 5 hours. That means that 6, this is when we're going to finish it. 5, this is when we promised it. It is, and think of it, it's just logic. That means that job A was going to be 1 hour tardy, or 1 hour behind. Okay, now C will be finished in 10 hours. The flow time is 10. I am looking up in the data and it says C is due in 9 hours. Yeah, there is another case where we are running 1 hour behind. The tardiness is 1 hour. And then E will be finished in 15 hours. Uh-oh. E is due in 7 hours. 15 minus 7. E is going to be 8 hours tardy. Okay, now we know the tardiness of each one of these jobs. The question is, what's the average tardiness? We just average these numbers. Average 0, 0, 1, 1, and 8, or what is that, 10? 10 divided by 5. Average tardiness, 10 divided by 5, 2 hours. This sequence, shortest processing time. We average those numbers. The average tardiness is 2 hours. Now, it's true that 2 of the jobs were right on time and 1 of them was 8 hours late, but it's just considered a single score for, how good is that sequence. Average tardiness, 2 hours. Okay, now, next question. If Jack uses earliest due date, popular abbreviation EDD, to schedule these jobs, what is the flow time of job A? All right, so sort of similar to last time, we really actually need to set up that schedule. Not that it's tough. The schedule, what would it look like if he was using earliest due date? That's where you take the data and you sort it not by the processing time but by the due date, according to which is the earliest, which is the smallest. Well, that would be B. And then who's the next earliest, the next smallest? Well, that would be D. Then who is the next earliest, the next smallest? That would be A. This is starting sound familiar. Who's the next earliest, the next smallest? Oh, that would be E. And then the last one would be C because it has the largest of the due dates. All right, fine. Now, it didn't ask for the actual schedule. It asked for the flow time for A, so we should then complete the flow time calculations. So, flow time. Well, the flow time of the first job is automatically its processing time. B is 1 hour, so that's its flow time. The flow time for D is then that 1 hour because it had to wait, plus D is 2 hours worth of work, so its flow time is 3 hours. A is got to wait for 3 hours. A is 3 hours worth of work as well, so the flow time is 6, and that actually is what it's asking. Oh, and the funny thing is if I had noticed, it's not the same sequence as shortest processing time, but it is the same through the first 3, including A, and I had actually found that out before, but that's just kind of a coincidence. Anyway, I'm going to finish up the flow times just as long as we're working on this, so it's complete. Let's see, E has to wait for 6 hours. E is how many hours worth of work? It's 5. That means that it will be finished in 11. C has to wait for those 11 hours. C is 4 hours worth of work. The flow time for C is 15, and I'm really glad to see that because that's that same old 15 we got last time. But anyway, we actually answered that question about halfway through. The flow time for the job called A is 6 hours. Oh, all right. Now, what's the last question? If Jack uses earliest due date, which is this, to schedule these jobs, when will job E be finished? Easy! That is another way to ask the flow time of E. This is just another way to word it. When will job E be finished is asking for the flow time of E, and we had gone ahead and we had found that anyway. That is 11 hours. So, that's finished.